There you go. Hey, how are you? Let me
Good, how
just
are you?
good. Hold on.
Right on.
There we
Well,
go.
thank you for taking some time this morning to hang out and join the Toddcast here.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
And I'm wondering, like, how have we never, like, I know for sure we have mutual friends. Like, how have we never met?
Sure. I mean, I was on Pulse 107 for like 3 years. So I was with oh God, Leah Halive. You probably know Leah. And then
Yeah.
also who was her morning show? All of a sudden he's escaped me. I think I know who he'd be. Oh
Mm.
my God. Mm. There's a one guy that
Anyone?
passed away. There was a one guy that passed away. He was older. He had cancer. What was his name? Oh my God, they're totally names escape me. That's who I was on with first. And then the second guy was a tall guy. He no longer is in radio anymore. He's totally gone out. He lives in White Rock, but he was on for years and years too. Because you do radio as well, or you did
Well, I
radio.
did radio, yeah, for
Yeah. So you
15
would know both
years
of them.
here.
If you know Leah, then you'd know who.
Yeah, of course I know Leah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
how did you like radio? How'd you like
I
working
loved it.
at
I loved it.
Pulse?
Yeah, I loved it. I didn't like Pulse. I mean, Pulse was, but I think the experience I had, it was such a great learning experience, right? Like they didn't pay me. I got them business because I basically had Nature's Fair sign into a commercial contract with them. So then they did Nature's Fair covered my segments, and also so we did a bit every day for 5 like 2 seconds, actually, sorry, 30 seconds, a 30-second advertisement, and it'd be sponsored by Nature's Fair, but I brought Nature's Fair to the table because I have a relationship with all the stores. So that worked really well. And then I went on every Wednesday. So I
And they
brought,
legitimately didn't pay you.
oh no, no, no. And that, but in
Sounds
that,
like radio.
yeah, but in that, I know, but in that too, I mean, I received it was just such a great learning experience in the sense of, um, learning to talk on radio, learning to enunciate words, doing just all the stuff I even do now when I do public speaking or when I do anything on my social channels, um, having that ability to, yeah, it all kind of adds up to the stuff that I've done. I'd love to go back and have something. I mean, I don't have time right now. I probably could make time. I think about it, I'm like, how did I even have time back then? Like I wrote everything. I drive in once a week. I'd like record everything and then I do the show. And I'm like, and we do like 15-minute shows. So it would be in-depth conversations about, and I'd give them questions. And I'm like, oh my God, how did I do that? How did I have time for that? I drove all the way to White Rock every single time. So
Yeah.
I did Burnaby. I'm like, what the hell? Um, but I think there's an opportunity still. I think having like a wellness is such a top of mind thing, having, some sort of segment on some radio show where it's like a 5-minute like wellness blurb
Sure. So
every,
what eats up your time like now then?
oh, air and wellness for sure.
Yeah.
Right. So we have the product lines. We have 13 SKUs. We have 2 more launching next month. Sold in about 500 retailers across Canada. So like Whole Foods, Nature's Fair, all those guys. And then we
Wow.
also branched into the States. So I'm launching my 5th SKU on Amazon.com. And right now I just finished the TradeX, the Vancouver Board of Trade TradeX course, because I'm already on Amazon down there, but you're just a blip in a sea of unregulated supplements, which is such a joke. Because their supplements are not regulated at all. Like I've always tell people, like, I would not buy American supplements. You couldn't pay me to take an American supplement because you have no idea what's in it. Oh yeah, it's
Hmm.
not. Canada is where you want to buy your supplements. That's where the regulation is, which we're also under a huge cost recovery that the government of Canada is trying to put through, Health Canada, which is going to drastically decrease the amount of availability we have of supplements, and it's going to increase cost for Canadians. It's quite scary what they're doing.
Hmm.
So in that, what we've decided to do after doing this thing is I'm going to get a distributor in California. So I've just reached out and talked to somebody and kind of do more of that aspect. So I'm in retail and then online, so you can give yourself more exposure. So,
Hmm.
so it's just, I'm constantly speaking, and I go to the island this week and I'm speaking in Coquitlam this week and talking to women
Wow.
about perimenopause and health and wellness. And it's not just take my supplements as much as I want them to. It really, if your body is not doing well, if you're like not healthy, if your periods are off, if you're overweight as well, this is going to greatly impact you as you get older. And I'm not saying you have to be a certain size or anything along those lines, but everybody should be lifting heavy weights. Weight bearing exercises is essential for our musculoskeletal system, and also type 2 diabetes, dementia, like all these different things. And there's going to be a huge demographic of us in the next, 10, 15 years. And if we're not taking care of some of the signs that are happening now, it's going to be, yeah, it's not going to be fun. I'm taking care of my 72-year-old dad, and he has dementia, and I deal with all his stuff. And my mom, and they're not together, my mom has aged in a spectacular manner, right? She's taken ongoing university courses. She plays pickleball. She does book clubs. She is exactly how I want to age. And then I have a parent on the other side who has made very different choices, and he is now dealing with the repercussions. So when I do these talks to women, as much as I want them to buy my vitamins, I'm like, if you can lift heavy weights, take anything in this conversation tonight, lift heavy weights, start having more protein, really start paying attention to the signs your body is telling you, even in your 30s and 40s, because it goes by so fast. And before we know
Oh, yeah.
it, right? It
Yeah.
does go by fast. And before you know it,
Crazy.
you're going to be like 60, 70 years old with mobility issues, and you can't you have no autonomy, and you have to rely on your kids to help you. And that's a really shitty position to put them in when they're trying to raise their kids, right? This sandwich generation that ends up happening, where your kids are trying to raise their kids, and all of a sudden they have you, and you've kind of fallen apart because you didn't take action and start taking care of your health. So that's a huge, huge mission of mine when I do my talks. That's what I really, really resonate with, is trying to get people to eat better, lift heavy weights, take
Mhm.
care of themselves, so.
When you say like lift heavy weights, like that could literally be just your own body weight. It doesn't need to
It can
necessarily
be.
be like go and lift like 120 pounds and what I mean?
Yeah,
Like your body weight is heavy. Like you go do
yeah,
some
but at
push-ups,
the
go do
most
some
part,
sit-ups and see how you
yeah,
feel.
for
Like,
sure. And I think if it's somebody who's a very beginner, I was talking to another lady, and I mean, I train every day. I train at 5 o'clock. I go to the gym every day. I lift
wow.
heavy. I did squats today. It was leg day today. And I've lifted since I was 16. My dad was a bodybuilder when I was younger, like hobbyist bodybuilder. So I've always,
Interesting that he was a bodybuilder and
I know.
yet he fucking went down that path. Like,
Well, see,
what?
so the past, we think when he lived alone, he really isolated himself. He drank excessively, right?
Mm,
So I think that was a big part of it. He smokes a lot of pot, but he's very secluded. He has no friends. He like doesn't want friends. I just put him back in touch with his family, right? So he was like, I am his friend. I talk to him every morning at 7 a.m. Like, right? Are you okay? How you doing? Like, so that is a big proponent or component of health and wellness. And that's why we have 5 pillars with my brand. And it's the thoughts you think, because I don't care how much ashwagandha you take. If you're in a fear-based negative state of mind, you're still going to be fucking stressed. The friends you keep,
so true, huh?
you have to have support. You have to have people that are your lifelines, people that you do things with, people that are encouraging you, that you're, like my mom has her group of friends and they do all their things together. And that stuff is so important, right? The food you eat, then movement, and then supplementation. And that's when supplementation can actually do its job for you, is when you're, combining all of these together. And that's that's the brand mission. And that's where I do all my talks, weave through that too. I go through all those different things. Right. So, but yeah, with him, he isolated himself. I think that's a big part of it. He stopped reading. He stopped, he just didn't, he had 2 degrees. He was a smart man. I think it's his own insecurities personally, that kept him kind of more trapped. Right. And I think guys experience that a little bit more than women, because we tend to be more, we tend to have our gaggle of girlfriends that we talk to, and guys tend to, and especially if a guy is single, and when a guy gets older, when he's single, they're more isolated, right? And it becomes a little bit more scary, because all of a sudden they're really by themselves and they don't have that group of people. Especially if they're in a church, that might be a different situation, because then you have that community. But if you don't have community, and there's a lot of, I think, older guys that don't have community, and I think that's where you see, especially with him, and community does everything. I mean, whether you're going for a coffee with your friends and venting, it makes all the difference in the world. So I think that was part of his stuff.
Mm.
And in that, I'm the one who now takes care of him. Like literally, he was in the hospital for 10. I do everything for him. Bills, everything, everything. Grocery shopping, everything. Um, so in that's
A lot
part
of
of
work there
it. It's a
too.
lot of
Holy
work. Yeah.
crap.
Yeah. Because my one brother's at McGill and the other one's in Bangkok, and they're both profs. But so it's law and me, right? And And that's okay. Like I can handle, I was talking to his nurse the other day, he was in the hospital for 10 days and she goes, "You're very high functioning, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Just a bit, you could say so." I'm like, she's like, "Holy shit." I'm like, "I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but I'm going to take it. I'm going to take
Yeah,
this one.
yeah, yeah.
My ego can take it as like high functioning." So yeah.
Wow. What's the wildest thing you've heard about like mental disorders that is absolute garbage and bullshit?
Oh geez. I think I just I find it interesting. I don't even know if there's I think that's a tough subject because it's hard because it's so individual, right? Depends what the person's trauma has gone through as a child. I think one of the big things that I hope in the next bit our medical system will start looking at a little bit more is the fact that a lot of, mental health, we have to look at the stuff that happened. Gabriel Maite talks a lot about this, right? The trauma that happened when you were a kid, right? In the womb, even, right? That cortisol level, if your mom was in a constant state of fight or flight when you were in womb, that can affect you and how your cortisol responds when you get into fight or flight situations. And all of that is so interconnected. And so I think we need to, instead of just always band-aiding things and giving antidepressants, and there is a place for it. I'm a very big advocate for the medical system as well. I'm not an anti-medicine, anti-vax person. There's a place for it. So whatever works for you. But I think we need to start looking a little deeper sometimes, right? Instead of looking at what's actually really gone on. Because, I was watching this show years ago when COVID was going on, and there was it was death row, and they had all the inmates on death row, and like 99.9% of death row inmates were sexually molested, came from horrible, traumatic, instances as children. You look at these little 2-year-olds, and that wasn't their trajectory, but they weren't given even an opportunity. Like they just, you're put in a situation where you were, you know, molested and beaten and all these things, and then you expect somebody to turn out differently, right? When they know no better. So I think looking at past traumas, I think, is something that I think it's slowly beginning to evolve too. And even when it comes to addiction, like what are you feeling? What's going on? I was bulimic for 25 years. I battled with that, and we have addiction in our family. But in that, food was my comfort, right? It was my one thing that was always there for me. And I think everybody has something, really, for the most part. And when you really begin to kind of do a little work, you're like, oh, okay, I see what I'm doing here, right? This is something that's soothing me. This is something that's comforting me. Yeah, so I think when it comes to mental health, possibly looking more at that, and there probably are some great doctors working within that. I'm not a specialist in mental health by any capacity.
Yeah.
So,
And how long have you been past eating disorders?
let's see. So I had my kind of aha moment. I think it was about 12 years ago,
Mm,
right? And that was really the catalyst. I'd been in the supplement industry for 20 years, and I had been a holistic nutritionalist. I worked with women. I was really good at giving advice, not so good sometimes at taking it myself.
mhm.
And I had started at like 14. My parents put me in Weight Watchers at 13. I was a really big kid. I was homeschooled because I was teased so much. My mom now, in retrospect, looks back and she's just mortified with the whole Weight Watchers thing. But she was like trying to help me, and she thought, well, this will be great.
Sure,
Uh, and so I kind of had my aha moment about 12 years ago where I went to purge, and my daughter knocked on the door. And so when I kind of caught myself and I was like, holy shit, and she would have been about 2 or 3. And I saw myself in the mirror. I was like, if I don't get a grip on this is going to be her. She's going to have the same food issues I have because she's going to watch me and not necessarily know what I'm doing, but watching this binging mentality with food and this lack of control and this lack of being able to enjoy food and then put it down, right? And having a healthy relationship with it. And so that's when I really began peeling back the layers. And my mom was a counselor at the time, so I worked with her. I changed the way I took certain foods out of my house, like trigger foods. It's just like an alcoholic, right? You don't have alcohol in your house. I didn't have cake batter. I didn't have certain things that I always loved that would trigger me for a binge. It
mm,
was usually always carbohydrate rich foods. I took those out for a long time. And I worked through it took me a couple years. And then that's when I came up with my 5 pillars as well, right? So it's not just because it's really, the thoughts you think. Cognitive behavioral therapy was a really big part of my healing, and that's the thoughts you think. So if I'm constantly thinking in a negative state of mind when it comes to food, or if I'm, if I have this, I don't deserve it. I like this narrative that will end up spinning. I have to be able to catch that. And I heard a really great quote the other day, and I absolutely love it. She said, I can't control the first thought I have, but I can control the second. Right? Because our mind has 90,000 thoughts a day. Our mind comes to us. 70,000,
What?
they say, are the exact same thought from the day before. When you actually now today, you're gonna be like, holy shit, I am thinking the same thing over and over again. Right. So, and they say like 80% of those are negative, like negative
Mm,
thoughts about ourselves, right? So I love that where it's like the first thought is like, because your mind's just constantly popping stuff. You can't control that one, but you can either choose to dwell on it and continue doing this, or be like, no, that's not what I'm choosing. This is what I'm choosing. And I knew. And that's what I had to really do when it came to my eating disorders, constantly shift like a muscle, like working out. And
interesting.
in
That's
that,
you remember when there's a guy named on Friends that passed away,
yeah.
Matthew Perry.
Mhm.
There was a bunch of interviews and stuff that went around afterwards, after he'd passed, and that was one of the things that he'd said as an alcoholic, like, I can't control the first, but I can control the second. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm not gonna, drink, it's up to me
Yeah.
to stop it, right?
It is. It is. And it is, I mean, and recognizing what's going on, I began to really shift how I viewed bulimia as well. My bulimic Aaron was my friend. And anytime I feel anxiety, anytime I feel that because it's almost like I get an anxiety around food. I don't have it anymore, but if that shows up, that's my friend saying, hey, you're not paying attention to something going on right now. So stop for a second. Like if you're somebody who struggles with alcohol, struggles with drugs or smoking, whatever, when it shows up for you, what's going on? What's causing you to be like, I need to fill something. I need to, like, something's going on in my life. And so I really began to look at her more as a friend when she showed up. If that anxiety started kicking in, I'd be like, okay, what am I not paying attention to? What's going on right now? What does little Aaron need? What does little bulimic Aaron need that I'm not honoring? Right. So
Mm,
that became shifting that narrative too, instead of this negative, horrible thing I was trying to battle. It was like, no, it's just little Erin, and this is her way of trying to deal with stuff. And she likes to eat because she used to get attention when she ate. And so what's happening right now?
mm,
And I think that was a really big turning point as well. My mom and I wrote a book together. So it's called Bulimia to Balance. And we did #1 on Amazon. And in there, it's a workbook. So it's on there now. So you can have my whole stories in there. And it's also a workbook to help women who are kind of dealing with food and issues. And I talk a lot about the shifting the narrative that bulimia is my friend, or whatever it is you're dealing with, looking
mm.
in a different light.
Interesting. What
Yeah.
what did you want to do as a kid, like in high school?
I wanted to be famous. My girlfriend and I were
Seriously?
talking about that the other day. I'm like, oh my God, so embarrassing. I went to acting and singing. I have a demo CD as well. I used to sing and play guitar.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think it's funny now. I look at what I'm doing now. I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. I wake up every morning super excited to take on the day, and that I get to do what I'm doing and hopefully help women live a better life. And I go to bed excited that I get to wake up the next day and do what I do. So I also tell people all the time, like if I win the lottery, I'm not going to be a person that disappears. You're all of a sudden going to see like thousands of Aeryon wellness products. I'm just gonna be like, yeah, I can do this. I can do big, right? So yeah, I just love what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's great. And your
Yeah.
website, AaronWellness.com, like, holy wow, are there some people showing you love on that website? Oh my
Thanks.
God. Like
Yeah.
some of the quotes are insane.
Yeah, we've got some.
Changing people's lives straight up.
Yeah, it has been really, I mean, the big thing with Aeryon Wellness, and this is how I mean, this is the huge differentiating factor and got me on Dragon's Den in 2022. And I walked away with 3 offers. And what that was is we have a program with every product. So when you scan that QR code on the label, it takes you to 2 meal plans, workouts, videos, affirmations, education, and that all comes from the 5 pillars. Right. So I'm not saying I don't have a magic pill. I wish I did. But what it is doing, it is giving the consumer the support they need to make the habit changes to have sustainable health and wellness. What this also does too is for the consumer, for the retailers, if they're busy in store or if they have new staff, because a lot of the time it's transient, you got like kids coming in or people working, they can scan it and watch the video. Every product has a 60-second video where Cole's notes tell you exactly what this product does. It's lowered our return rate for one thing, because people know what they're buying, right?
Yeah.
And then also we've just had incredible success with people who actually scan the QR code, use the recipes, do the workouts, really learn about whatever issue they're buying in, like they're buying the product to help them alleviate. So they're like, oh, okay, hormonal health. Oh, and we have a thing on perimenopause and PMS. And then we go into the 4 cycles of a woman's cycle. Then we go into, like, we just have so much content in there to help educate the consumer. So that's a really a huge differentiating factor. That's what got me on Dragon's Den, because I'm the only one doing something like that.
And 3 offers. That's
Yeah, yeah.
insane.
I said yes to Arlene. I knew I wasn't going to take the offer anyways. I was never going to give anybody part of my company.
Yeah.
I'm 100% bootstrapped and I own it all. And eventually I will, obviously need to have maybe possibly somebody come in, outside investment eventually. I'd rather not. I'd rather keep it in myself as much as I can. That's what the true value is, I think.
Yeah.
But we had some great conversations. I talked with her for over a year. So before you go on the show, I mean, you could tell them you're making $20 million a year. They don't do any due diligence before the show. It's after the show, when you meet with your dragon, that then they start doing due diligence. And I wanted them to come back and give me the offer, because they could come back and see that everything doesn't add up and be like, oh, your company's not doing this. We're not offering you. So December, we filmed in May. December, they came through, they offered me everything. And I said, no, thank you very much. I just wanted to kind of get through it all. And I also wanted to see how she went about it. I had several meetings with her. She's lovely. I have the utmost respect for her. Because I know when I get to a certain point, I really want to work with female entrepreneurs as well.
Mhm.
And I already do. I do a lot of mentorship, but I'd like to be able to invest in somebody else and not be the person that's like slugging away in the
Yeah,
field,
yeah, fair enough, right?
So,
Can't
um,
bust your ass all the time, like
right. I can just like watch and support and, watch my money grow. But when they came back in December and they said, no, what I did was I took the episode and I went to the bank and I asked for $100,000. And
mm,
then the bank, I said, you got to watch the video. You can understand the business. And they came back with a million questions. And I said, you didn't watch the video, did you? And he's like, no, I didn't. I'm like, give me 7 minutes, watch it. And he came
please.
back, he's like,
Yeah.
I totally get your business now. He goes, okay. And I got $100,000 from the bank without giving up anything. I have a
Wow.
high interest rate, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
have to give up 25%, which, that works out in the end too. So,
Mm,
so yeah.
yeah, good for you. Aaron, let's get outside of what you're known for, health and wellness, and get
Okay.
to know you a little bit here.
Okay.
Music in your house as a kid.
Christian music. We were super Christians. So
Yeah.
I wasn't, yeah. So it would have been Amy Grant for
Yeah.
sure. Amy Grant.
Vince
Yeah.
Gill.
Yeah, we didn't listen to Vince Gill's. It would have been Amy Grant was really big because she was super Christian back in the day.
Yeah.
So that was probably, I mean, I'm trying to think. We didn't have television. My parents were
You didn't
yeah,
have
we didn't have TV.
television.
My parents were super Christian for quite a while. I was homeschooled. We lived in Chase inside Turtle Valley, which is like 30 kilometers in from Chase, BC. So it was, yeah. So
Wow. So
yeah,
small town,
it wasn't even a town. It's
but
just like a
big
valley.
corporation or something.
Yeah, it's
For
just like a
whatever.
valley. But we had horses and the other local girl, she was homeschooled too. We horseback
The
rode.
other local girl is
Well,
like,
when I moved in, I remember our parents brought us to meet each other because she had no friends. And they're like, here's your friend. And, you're at an age, we're like, yay. She was like 3 years old. And I'm like, we're best friends. And that was, that was it. So, yeah, no, we did a lot of church stuff. So lots of church songs is what I know. So
okay. And what was your first concert you went to?
Madonna in Toronto. And that was the Vogue Ambition Tour concert. When I think that was the highlight to me, that was one of her highest points that
Sure.
was huge. My aunt called me and said, I bought you a ticket. Would you like to come to Madonna? I'd never been to Toronto. I'd always been a really bigger girl. I remember walking down Yonge Street for the very first time with her, and a guy looked at me and he said something like, hey, beautiful. And I was like, because he was talking to me, I'd never had that before. And I looked at my aunt, I said, I'm going to move here one day. And then I moved there 5 years later.
Wow.
So
How old were you for that? Because like Madonna, I'm
I
just
was
thinking about that
14.
Like a Prayer video, and like
I
that
was,
pushed some buttons with the
it
church.
did. Well, even, yeah, I did. And just her Vogue. I mean, like I can still
Yeah.
vote
Like
this
everything
day.
about her, I guess, kind
Yeah.
of push buttons.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, she was actually just in town and I actually didn't even realize it. I went to her concert here a couple years ago and it wasn't the same. I just didn't,
Yeah.
wasn't the same thing anymore. Um, But yeah, it was a fantastic concert. I remember I had to go by myself because my aunt had 2 tickets, but we couldn't go the same day. So I had to navigate, and I was 14. I had to navigate, taking the streetcars, getting to it by myself, and all of
Wow.
that, which was a really great experience. I was always very independent to a certain degree, even though I was kind of sheltered. And the same thing I've done for my daughter. She's very independent as well.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, no TV as a kid, but like TV now. What do you when you find time? What are you binging?
Yeah. Well, I'm embarrassed to say, but Love is Blind has started again this year. So
Mhm.
I'm horrible. I love that show. We power watched it yesterday. The other day, my daughter and I were like, oh my God.
Yeah,
Um, I actually don't watch a lot of TV. When I come home, I usually put stuff on that I don't have to focus on so I can work. So I always got
yeah.
my laptop and I'm always working
You
somewhere.
strike me like you and I are very same in that regard. Like when I go to BCIT and I do my gig, I come home, kiss my wife, hug my kids, try to find time for them, and then otherwise I'm just fucking working all the
Yeah,
time. Like I
I
work all the time with this podcast, interviews, editing, social media, like all that shit. Like,
know. I know.
you know,
But
like
when you
you, I don't
love
have.
it,
Do you have people on the side that are kind of helping out or anything?
I
Like,
have contract workers. I had somebody ask me this the other day. I was meeting somebody for a lunch and they're like, so how long are you gonna do this all by yourself? Like what's, and I'm like, well, I have people who I have contract workers.
right,
And I think I'm going to try to do it as long as possible. I think there's this pressure to, for one, I think in entrepreneur land, it's pressure to get investors. Everybody's like, get investors. Like there's always hearing people about getting, angel funding and all this stuff going on. And then there's
that
always
sounds great.
pressure,
Like,
right?
sure,
And then you have to give up percentages. And then there's always that you need to have a big team working for you. And I literally have everybody as contract workers and they're awesome. And eventually maybe down the road, but for the most part, I run everything. So I mean, my social media girl, we're filming content today, but I go in and get all the recipes, get everything organized, and she'll come over, we film and, we kind of work through stuff together. I have a great Amazon person. I have a great distributor, a great sales team, but they're all contract.
right, right.
Yeah, I'm the only employee. And I had to pay employment taxes the other day, so I can't even imagine having like employees of like 100 people, the amount of taxes I would be paying the government.
I
It
know
would
you
be
just
insane,
die in
like
taxes.
insane. Like I
Yeah,
can't even imagine how much,
yeah.
employment taxes you pay every month. So
I know it's crazy, right? Aaron, how about sports? Are you following the Vancouver Canucks in their awesome season?
I'm not much of a hockey person. I will watch if somebody wants to take me to a box, I will gladly. So anybody out there
Go
would like to take me to
Bucks.
a box, I will go. Um,
Nice.
I have to say this year, the Super Bowl, we got so into it. It's so funny, the Taylor Swift effect. We were so into it. The game was so good,
Yeah,
right?
it really
So it
was.
was
Yeah,
such a fantastic friggin' game.
yeah.
Um, so
Did
we
they
really
say
like
something
that.
like 70% more women 18 to
Yes.
34 or some shit like that? Like
Yeah.
70%,
Yeah,
man.
like what an
One
incredible,
person.
yeah. And just even I saw this one commercial, I don't remember what the name of the company was, but they showed like how a dad and daughter began like watch the game together and how it's that Taylor Swift effect is bringing people together. And I just thought how incredible for her to know that she's created relationships between dads and daughters who maybe never had a connection, right? Maybe they don't know how to talk and it's kind of the awkward teenage years, but Taylor Swift is on, she'll come sit and
Yeah.
watch the game with him, right? And how that's really branched. And I thought just to be heard, to know you've done something that would just be such an incredible feeling. But I love basketball.
Mm.
I don't mind football as well. I'll go to the Lions game. My, girlfriend's husband is one of the VPs, so we get good seats.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, it's
The
got to
name
be
of the
good
game is,
seats, though.
if you get me good seats, I will go to
Right.
anything and cheer them
Figures
on.
if you get her in good seats, she's in.
I'm in
Did
anything. So
Did you see many of the games when we had the Grizzlies in town? Like that
no,
was.
I wasn't here at the time.
Oh,
I
you
was
weren't.
in
Oh,
Toronto. No, I lived in Toronto at
oh.
the time. Yeah, so I
So
was
you
out there.
watched a lot of Raptors then,
I
obviously.
do. I like the
Yeah,
Raptors. Yeah, they're
yeah,
good.
yeah,
So, and going to a live game is great, especially when you're, right down. That's where the action is. The energy is very, very different than being nosebleeds. That's why I say good
yeah,
seats
yeah.
definitely
Totally,
help.
totally. All right, Aaron, I'll respect your time. Two more questions, and I'll
Okay,
wrap
sure.
this up.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a question. It's more of a story. I want to know, do you have a story where you almost died? A near death story where like, holy shit, I could have died there.
Oh. Um, God, I mean, the one thing I can think about is I remember years ago in my 20s, is actually not a good story, but years ago in my 20s, my girlfriend and I went down to Buffalo, New York, went out for the night, met these guys, and they ended up actually kind of kidnapping us to a certain degree. The one guy took her upstairs, and I was in the car with the other guy, had a gun on me. And it was terrifying. I remember I was basically pretending I had a kid and telling them this whole story. And the guy raped my girlfriend upstairs and then drove us to the border. And then they got out and we drove across. And that would have been my near-death experience. So
Holy
yeah, it was pretty
shit.
intense. Yeah. So I don't think you're probably expecting that, but
I know, I was not expecting. I was
yeah,
like,
I've
"Oh,
had some
chased by
pretty,
a bear,"
no,
something
I've
like
had some
that, but, like,
pretty, I've,
that's nuts, like, what
yeah,
the time frame for that? Like, how long
it
did
was
that
hours.
last?
It was hours. I was in the car for hours with him downstairs. Yeah, and he had the other guy, and I thought then I was going to be next.
Yeah,
And I don't know if it was the conversation. I remember I was trying to talk to him and asking him if he had kids, and he told me he did
sure.
have kids. And so I said, my daughter's the same age. And so I kind of made this narrative so then he'd hopefully see a little bit of myself in possibly the mother of his kids.
Yeah.
Um, and
Wow.
so nothing happened with me. Yeah, nothing happened with me. Her and I are still good friends. We were friends for many, many years. She never spoke about it after. I mean, and she
No.
was married too, right? So there was a whole thing beyond that as well. So yeah, she doesn't live in the country anymore. But so yeah, it was terrifying when I think about it now. That was funny. That was the first thing that came to my mind was that one. I was like, oh yeah, wow, I haven't thought about
Y
that for a while.
Yeah, wow, that is insane. What a
Yeah,
crazy story.
yeah.
Alright, could
Next
be the
question.
easiest, could be the hardest. Hit
Okay.
us with your career highlight.
Oh gosh, I have so many. Winning Launchpad at CHFA was definitely a career highlight. So we won Innovative Product of the Year with Up and Away, which is our 100% boric acid. I was the very first company in Canada to launch a kit with an applicator in a box. Um, and okay, I'll tell you the story behind it because I spoke about it the other day at the summit. So I spoke at the summit for the forum and I talked about rock bottoms. And I said, one of my rock bottoms, this is my favorite rock bottom. So it's my favorite rock bottom, but my favorite highlight as well. So I had been dating somebody for quite some time. We had a long-term monogamous relationship. He didn't get the memo on that.
Right.
Um,
With
and
the
the
air
last
quotes. Kinda gave it
last
away
year of
there,
our
yeah.
relationship, he was with everybody. And the worst part was everybody knew but me. And I remember crying to my mom on the phone and just like, I was devastated. My body ached, just like I was just devastated. He lived with us. So it was my daughter that was affected as well. It was just
Mm,
awful.
mm,
And my mom's like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I'm like, Mom, everybody knew. Like for everybody knew but me. It was so embarrassing. And then she's like, everything's gonna be okay. I'm like, okay, it can't get any worse. But 2 weeks later, I found out he gave me chlamydia. So then,
of
so
course you
then I
did.
did
Yeah.
2 rounds of antibiotics just to be safe. So chlamydia, everything's fine. Everything's fine. But then what ended up happening is it decimated my vaginal pH. So a woman's vagina is supposed to be a 3.5, super acidic. If it becomes more alkaline, that's when you become a yeast infection.
Mm,
That's itchy, discharge, uncomfortable, no fun. That's around a 5, right? So we're 3.5. If it goes up to around a 5, that's yeast infection. If it becomes more alkaline, you get bacterial vaginosis. So know how your listeners are like, wonderful. What are we learning today? So there's no
they're like,
itchy,
"What a way to wrap this up."
no, no itchy and uncomfortable, but there's a smell to it. It's still no fun. So after round and round of antibiotics for that, 6 months worth, I finally scored an appointment with a gynecologist and I walked in and like shared my vaginal and emotional woes and everything. And she just was like, boric acid. I'm like, what? And she's like, boric acid. At the time, nobody sold any. So I drove from pharmacy to pharmacy to pharmacy, finding somewhere to compound it for me. And I got my boric acid, put it in my, little drawer. It worked within 2 days. It was amazing. I was like, wow, this stuff is incredible.
Mm,
Fast forward 5 years later, I'd started Aeryon Wellness. I was driving across the Lionsgate Bridge just before you hit the lines when you're coming into downtown.
mhm.
And this thought came to my mind. It was like, is anybody selling boric acid? Because it wasn't a prescription. I scored the NPN for it, natural product number, which is what you have to have. I struggled with the name because a lot of the name in that category are Vagi or Gyna, and I'm like, not doing that. I was making my bed, and in my mind, I went up, up, and away as I threw my duvet in the air, and I was like, it's up and away because you put it up and it goes away. It's a vaginal suppository.
Mhm, mhm.
So 4 months later, I found myself on stage pitching to 150 retailers and judges. It's kind of like our version of Dragon's Den. And I had on the screen, whenever the word vagina came up, everybody had to scream vagina, which you don't know how much people love to scream that word. So everybody screamed vagina, and I went on to win $25,000. I won Innovative Product of the Year, and I was able to dedicate it to Michaela, my daughter, because she is the one who sacrifices the most in my venture, because I'm always focusing on work. So that would have been a high moment, but it was a rock bottom. So I also say this too. I'm like, I've never been so happy that somebody cheated on me and gave me chlamydia. It's my number 3 best-selling product. I make a ton of money on it. I've helped women all across Canada. And the irony is he owns a health food store now. And I've always wondered if he carries up and away and he has no idea that it came from him.
Right? He very well could. That'd
So
be hilarious.
that was definitely a highlight and a great story to always know that these rock bottom moments when we think there is no hope, that they are the moments we can learn and grow, and we need them. Whenever I get one now, when I have something really challenging show up, I'm like, okay, what am I going to learn this time? So I view it in a very different light.
Yeah.
So
You are a freaking superhero, Aeryon. Oh my God. What a crazy life. What a crazy story. You got a great story. I love it.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm working on the book. Trust me, the book is interesting.
Nice. You are at Aaron Bella Ashley on Instagram, aaronwellness.com for your website.
Yep, Aeryon
That's
Wellness
it.
for Instagram. Subscribe to our newsletter. We actually have tons of information. We have a new perimenopause manual we're putting together. We're going to be giving out. So I welcome people to subscribe. They can look at our events page, find out where I'm speaking. And it's spelled Aeryon. So like people think it's Arian, but it's Aaron.
Yeah, just to throw a curveball.
Well, you got to try to be different.
Yeah. Aeryon, thank you again. Have a great
Thank you
day,
so
and
much.
we'll tag you when we're chucking the stuff around online.
Perfect. Thank you so much.